3059. Now the insight starts now. And dozens of Kenyans flocked the registration centers on the final day of the month-long continuous voter registration exercise, with long queues reported in several parts of the country. Now, the exercise conducted by the Independent Electoral Memories Commission, that is the IEBC, recorded strong turnout, with many centers surpassing 50% of the targets for new voter registration. However, some citizens cited delays in acquiring national identity cards as a key challenge that affected their ability to register in time. Now, those who missed the deadline have now been advised to register at IEBC constituency offices and Huduma centers across the country, as the Commission continues efforts to ensure more eligible voters are captured ahead of the upcoming elections.
Because in our targets, we are able to meet more than 50% of our target, meaning that we registered above 50% of our eligible voters in the county.
Niliandikisha kuwa mpiga kura jana, na leo nimekuja katika afisi za IEBC kuconfirm kama kweli niko kadi, kwa maana 2027 niko na kazi ya kufanya.
IEBC Mombasa County had a target of 73,219 and 18. We've managed to register 65% of this target as at yesterday.
Process imekuwa mbio, hakuna delays, kwa karibu dakika 3 hivi. So far we've managed to register 58.5% as at yesterday.
Tulikuwa tunaendelea na mobilization. Changamoto ambayo tulikuwa nayo ni hawa majensi. Ilikuwa ngumu kwao kuwa convince wachukue kura.
Ni muhimu sana kujisajili. Nasikia watu wengine wanasema ati barabara hii, kazi hii, hapana.
Young people, you always complain about agencies not being represented. This is your golden opportunity to be sure to be able to take a voter's card.
I would say there has been an upsurge. We've seen more voters coming to register, especially the young people, in the last 2 days, especially today.
All right, moving on, teachers, the Social Health Authority, that is SHA, and the Ministry of Health have signed a landmark agreement aimed at resolving long-standing challenges in the teachers' medical scheme and averting a planned nationwide strike. Now, the deal was reached on Tuesday following a high-level consultations involving the Ministry of Health, SHA, and the Kenya National Union of Teachers, focusing on operational hurdles that had disrupted the transition from the Mwalimu cover to the public officers medical scheme fund, that is POMSF. In a joint comic, the party reaffirmed their commitment to safeguarding teachers' welfare, announcing key reforms intended to restore smooth access to healthcare services across the country. And among major resolutions is of the full restoration of the last expense benefit, now set at 300,000 Kenya shillings. Now, the agreement confirms that 160 pending claims have already been processed, with payments set for release starting April 29th. Now, the deal also introduces an ex-gratia management framework to support teachers facing medical cost beyond standards cover limits, with the Teachers Service Commission, that is a TSC, tasked with processing applications, while SHA facilitates payments for approved claims. Right, moving on away from matters healthcare, the Senate has announced the resolution of a prolonged dispute between senators and the Council of Governors of accountability and county funding, paving the way for the renewed cooperation in budget negotiations. Now, Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheruiyot told the House that governors had agreed to withdraw the objections against the Senate, effectively ending the standoff that had stalled discussions on key fiscal matters. Now, following the breakthrough, senators agreed to proceed with the deliberations on the supplementary allocation bill for counties, which is aimed at enhancing devolution funding across the country. At the same time, the Senate Budget and Finance Committee has proposed that counties be allocated 454 billion Kenya shillings in the next financial year, a recommendation now set to be debated as part of the ongoing budget process.
And we made it clear to the Council of Governors that while we hear the issues that you're raising, withdraw first the conditions that you had set, which is non-appearance before that particular committee, before we listen to you in any other matter.
12 members of this House that through your wisdom you selected to sit with the governors. The interest that was supposed to be represented of this Senate was represented effectively.
Right, moving on, residents of Mwihoko Ward in Kiambu County are calling on authorities to urgently intervene and address deteriorating infrastructure as heavy rains continue to disrupt daily life in the area. Now, a spot check conducted by EBN TV shows that persistent downpours have left several roads in the ward in poor condition, making them impassable for both vehicles and pedestrians. Now, the situation has particularly affected school-going children who are now struggling to access learning institutions due to flooded and muddy roads. The residents are now appealing for immediate rehabilitation of the affected roads, warning that continued rainfall could further worsen the situation and paralyze movement within the ward. Right, quite unfortunate scenes right there in Kiambu County. Of course, we hope that the authorities in that particular country will come to the help of the residents. Moving on, President William Ruto has intensified his criticism of opposition leaders during a series of engagements across Nairobi, accusing them of lacking the experience and vision needed to lead the country. Now, speaking during his tour to Kibra, the head of state dismissed his critiques, saying those opposing his administration do not have a clear development agenda for the nation. Now, he maintained that his government remains focused on delivering tangible results for Kenyans despite political pressure. Now, during the visit, President William Ruto launched the expected several development projects in Kibra and Langata, underscoring his administration's commitment to improving infrastructure and public services. Take a look.
Sasa niwaulize, unajua kuna majamaa hapo wanajaribu kushindana na sisi. Wale majamaa wako chini sana, wako down. Nyinyi mnanielewa? Wale majamaa kazi yao ni matusi. Ati ile kazi kubwa wamefanya, ile ya maana sana, ati nikunitafutia jina ati Kasongo. Sasa hiyo ni kazi mtu anaweza kusema amefanya, si hiyo ni ufala? Ati kupatia mtu jina ndio kazi kubwa amefanya? Wale majamaa kazi yao ni matusi. Kazi yao wako na hasira mingi, wako na vitimbi mingi, wako na kiburi mingi na matusi mingi, lakini agenda hawana, mpango hawana, sera hawana, agenda hawana. Ni kweli ama si kweli? Kumbe mnawajua wale jamaa wa matusi mingi na kisirani mingi na balaa mingi na vitimbi mingi na kiburi mingi. Mnawajua ati mpango hawana, agenda hawana, sera, agenda, maono, hata akili. Salala. Ni kweli ama si kweli bana? Sasa niwaulize watu wa Kanairo, kama wangekuwa na akili, si wangewacha matusi watuambie sera yao? Kama wangekuwa na akili, si wangewacha kiburi watuambie sera yao? Kama wako na akili, si wangewacha chuki watupatie maono yao? Kwa hivyo agenda hawana, mpango, maono, sera, agenda, hata akili. Basi hiyo ndio story yao. Nairobi oye! Nairobi oye!
Now, the Judicial Service Commission has officially commenced interviews for the position of judge of the Supreme Court at the Milimani Law Courts in Nairobi, making the start of a key recruitment exercise for Kenya's Apex Court. And the process, which began on Tuesday, saw 5 shortlisted candidates appear before the panel on the first day of hearings. Among them is Court of Appeal Judge Katwa Kigen, a former lawyer to President William Ruto, who is seeking elevation to the Supreme Court bench. Other candidates being interviewed include Justice Francis Kiplagat Tuyot, Justice Abdullahi Mohamed Wasame, and Justice Anne Washeke Kiratu, and Macharia, all competing for the vacant position.
I know that you very particularly mentioned the point that I haven't been there for more than 3 months, and that in an ideal environment I should have waited for a little more time so that there is perimeters for my evaluation for promotion. my lady and commissioners, my understanding of why I am here is different from that. My understanding is that I've come here for evaluation as to whether or not I'm eligible for appointment to the Supreme Court. And that eligibility is not a question of promotion, it's a question of whether I'm qualified. And when I looked at the scoping that was done for a person who can qualify for that office, I thought I met the conditions, and in the circumstances I applied. So, Chair and Commissioners, I'm here very humbly seeking that I be evaluated on my competence to be appointed.
Public service, you can't join judiciary. I've always desired to serve in the judiciary so that I can contribute to the development of the law in this country. The Deputy Chief Registrar is because basically I believe that's a role that is administrative in nature and handles the human resource for the judiciary. I'm a human resource practitioner, I'm a lawyer, so I believed I would fit within that system, and it would give me an entry point to judiciary, where then I would understand how judiciary administration structures work. And being a lawyer, I would work in an environment where majority of the people really are lawyers, judicial officers. But my experience in HR and administration would help me strengthen the structures. At that point, judiciary was still taking a lot of transformational initiatives. So I believed having participated in transformational journeys at the Standard and at Faulu.
Right, moving on, President William Ruto has urged East African and African countries to stop exporting raw materials or the raw minerals without adding value, saying the practice continues to rob the continent of industrial growth and economic strength. Now, speaking during a mining investment conference and exhibition in Nairobi, Ruto said that Africa holds about 30% of the world's critical minerals, including cobalt, manganese, platinum, and rare earth elements used to modern technologies such as electric batteries, electric vehicles, and renewable energy systems. However, he noted that despite this vast resource wealth, the continent earns less than 1% of the global value generated from the sector, largely due to continued export of unprocessed raw materials.
Shares of cobalt, manganese, platinum, and rare earth elements essential for batteries, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and solar technologies. Yet, despite these endowments, the continent currently captures less than 1% of the value generated from global clean energy technologies. The reason is clear. For too long, we have extracted and exported raw materials at the bottom of the value chain, while others have processed, refined, manufactured, and captured the greater share of economic value. That is precisely why the government of Kenya has undertaken a clear and deliberate position. One I reaffirmed last week at the Africa We Build Summit, that Kenya will no longer be a supplier of raw materials to fuel the industries of others. Working in collaboration with our African colleagues, and this meeting is very pivotal. We will process our minerals here in the continent. We will refine them here. We will manufacture them here. The full length of the value chain must and will generate value for Africa, for African prosperity. Indeed, we are already on this journey. The iron ore pelletization plant in Taita Taveta, currently in final stage of construction, represents an 11 billion investment that will create approximately 3,000 jobs for our people, including the value of iron ore, of iron and steel that will come from that manufacture. Our gold refinery project is also advancing towards completion, while the Voi Gemstone Value Addition Center is already operational, serving artisanal miners and small-scale operators with access to cutting, polishing, grading, and international market linkages.
Now, Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki has highlighted Africa's potential to build a fully integrated digital economy connecting all countries across the continent, saying the region is ready to move from discussions to full implementation of key digital transformation projects. Now, speaking during the opening of the African Union Summit in Nairobi, Kindiki noted that Africa is well positioned to shape its digital future through coordinated investment in technology, infrastructure, and innovation across member states. Now, he pointed to Kenya's progress in expanding its digital infrastructure, including the digital superhighway project that has extended internet connectivity by over 100,000 kilometers, alongside the establishment of 382 digital laboratories across the country to support innovation and skills development.
We have built progress country by country, platform by platform, regulation by regulation, yet we have not extensively explored collaboration on the digital front. The next phase of this endeavor demands something bigger, some greater alignment, interoperability, trust, and a newly true African digital market. We have learned that digital transformation must rest on practical foundations. It must be built on infrastructure. It must be backed by public policy. It must be supported by skills. It must be designed around citizens and businesses. This is why, through our Ministry of Information, Communications, and the Digital Economy, we are pushing, as the government of Kenya, major initiatives such as the digital superhighway, which we want to expand by a new 100,000 kilometers. Already we've done 30,000, and we are on course to build the balance. Kenya has emerged as one of Africa's leading digital economies and a globally recognized innovation hub. I am sure for the rest of the countries represented here, you also have good things, success areas that we can, all of us, learn from.
Now, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, has raised concern over what he termed as the increasing commercialization of peace and conflict resolution efforts globally, warning that the trend risks undermining human dignity and the value of life. Now, speaking during an IGAD reconciliation meeting in Nairobi, Mudavadi said that recent efforts to resolve conflicts both in Africa and other parts of the world are increasingly being driven by private and commercial interest rather than the humanitarian principles. Now, he expressed concern that mediation processes are gradually being turned into business-oriented negotiations, a development he said distorts the core objective of restoring peace and stability in conflict-affected regions.
I want to agree that some scholars now in diplomacy are saying that peace has been privatized. Perhaps even commercialized. Because it's about transactions. It's no longer about humanity. Sustainable peace cannot be effectively achieved without peace, without meaningful participation of women, youth, and local communities. To this end, IGAD occupies a unique and strategic position. However, there is a clear need to further strengthen IGAD as the primary regional mechanism for peace and security in the Horn of Africa. Accordingly, I wish to reiterate that member states must take primary responsibility for financing IGAD programs in a predictable, adequate, and sustainable manner that enables the organization to effectively discharge its mandate.
Right now, moving on to the business front, tourism operators in Masai Mara National Reserve are raising alarm of a sharp decline in visitor numbers, which they attribute to the ongoing conflict involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. Business owners say that the drop in international tourists has significantly affected their livelihoods, with tour guides, safari drivers, and local traders reporting reduced income since the conflict began. Now, tour guides and drivers led by James Maripet and Joshua Maripet say that bookings have declined, leaving many struggling to sustain their operations. Now, they warn that if the situation persists, it could also impact the upcoming wildebeest migration season, one of the reserve's biggest tourist attractions.
Na biashara tuna hapa juu ya mafuta kwa biashara, na tuna wasungu hapa juu ya mafuta. Sasa tunataka masaidizi. Sasa nataka hivyo, hatuna wasungu juu ya hiyo mafuta, watu wetu hakuna mafuta. Sasa ndio shida hiyo. Sasa juu hakuna wasungu hapa, sisi watu wa Sekenani hatuna wasungu, na tunaangalia hawa wasungu na anapikana huko kwao, lakini tunaomba hiyo vita iende. Juu tunateseka hapa, tunaangalia hivyo na mafuta hakuna. Sasa tunataka tulilie serikali tuambie mafuta hakuna.
Within the ground, that is Masai Mara. Actually, if I try to figure out or to take some measures, comparison in between the previous year and this year, it's quite a very huge challenge due to the fight or the war that is going ahead in the Europe. Yeah, so it has just deducted the number of visitors to visit Masai Mara and other places for their holiday vacations due to the fear safety. So as Maasais who lives in along the Masai Mara, the business or everything we depend on or we rely on tourism. And if I try to see at the moment, everything has gone totally poorly or totally damaged, destroyed. The society doesn't, I mean, from kids to school, there's no any money to chase them to school.
Now we are suffering at the start of the conflict between Iran and United States. Due to their fight, there's minimum or few clients coming to Masai Mara. It's affecting us here at Masai Mara because there's very few clients coming, and that is as you know that in Masai Mara most of the in the Masai community they just depend on the visitors for their daily living and also to their some of their children to go to school. They highly depend on the visitors.
Alright, that particular story marks the end of our bulletin this particular night. You've been watching The Insight with me, Macharia, and I was joined by Laura Omondi on the sign language interpretation desk. Have yourself a lovely night. Enjoy the rest of your viewing, and as always, let's do this again when God says we do.